Just to introduce you to the people that are on the call here from Fit Factory, we've got Laura, our marketing director. We've got Carl Bowmaker, who's account manager up north. Ant Durrant, who's implementation manager. He's the one that's going to be doing the presentation for you all today. We've got Joe Durrant, who's sales engineer. So he's fairly new with the company, but learning the system to do the demos of the system. And obviously myself, Paul Reardon, the business development director. So this is the first webinar we've done, so please bear with us. Obviously, we're going to try and run through it, and hopefully it all goes smoothly. I'm sure it will. But the idea is that we're going to be holding this webinar today to run through things like the QMS module in Tricorn, the dashboard, the contract review module, RFQs, the purchasing assistant, and our new import tool. So Ant will be running these through for you, and there is the ability to write questions in the chat, and we'll have a QA section at the end where we'll go through and answer these questions. If we have time throughout the presentation, obviously we'll answer them as we go along, but we will have a chance at the end to turn your microphones on and you can ask any questions at the end. It's scheduled to be 45 minutes long for Ant to run through his presentation, and then the QA section at the end is 10 minutes. And then following the webinar, we will be sending out a survey, but I'll mention a bit more about that at the end of the presentation. So unless anyone else in the team has got anything else they'd like to add to this, we'll hand over to Ant and let him start running through the system with everyone.
The only thing to add is just that this is being recorded. Just to make everybody aware.
Okay.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Right, I'm going to begin with the QMS system. So, as you're all aware, this is obviously the home screen of Tricorn. And for those of you that don't have the quality system, there is an additional section at the bottom left of the screen that you can see here with some tabs. And it's made up of a few different tabs. So you've got procedures. So these will be procedures that you're going to be using amongst those different sections. So it could be a reject procedure, but it could also be how you prepare for an ISO audit. Then you've got audit. So that can be your ISO audit, could be your health and safety audit. So there's few different orders obviously you can put in there, and then you've got your rejects, you've got your non-conformances, concessions and complaints. So for rejects and non-conformances, those can be internal, customer and supplier, and depending on where you choose to create those records will determine what type you can raise. And then with concessions and complaints, it will be customer and supplier. And then the last two tabs, you have machines and you've got equipment. So machines will be your machine maintenance procedures, and then your equipment will be calibration schedules and that sort of thing. So we're going to sort of delve into those tabs, create some records, and you can kind of see how you can create certain works order types off the back of raising these quality records. For example, when you create a reject, you'll be able to raise a rework card, as well as seeing all of these sort of quality statistics on your dashboard, which is another subject in the webinar as well, which we'll be covering. So I'll start with procedures. So to create a procedure, you can use the plus at the top, just like any sort of record in Tricorn. And this could be a procedure for your internal ISO audit. And the system is going to give you the option to choose a category this procedure can sit in. So if we choose audits from our list, we can then press OK, and it's going to create a new audit with a new procedure number. And that is actually editable, which people aren't always aware of. You might have procedures that you already have created, and you're going to be translating them into Tricorn. You do have the ability to edit those so they match the current procedure numbers that you use. For certain instances, you may want to use that procedure as the default. So it might be the reject process. It might be the default procedure you want to use. So you can actually tick that box, and by ticking that box, the system will actually link that procedure to those categories automatically, so you don't have to. So something to bear in mind. And then you've got some boxes to fill out. So that would be like the detail of how you perform the procedure. If you have a quality manual already, I'd recommend not reinventing the wheel and writing it all out. There is a handy paperclip icon where you can print your current quality manual to a PDF, and you can attach the relevant pages actually to the procedure itself. Now they've got some boxes at the bottom as well. So you've got your notes, and then you've got spec to achieve. So the spec to achieve would probably be the British standard that you're essentially trying to achieve in order to pass that audit. So you could write out that information so everyone understands when we're performing this procedure, this is essentially what we're trying to achieve from it. And these are essentially the standards that we're trying to keep. And there is a revision note section as well, where as that procedure evolves and you make changes, you'll be able to actually document them there. So you can have maybe some initials, dates, times, an explanation of the changes that you've made to that procedure. And at the bottom of the screen, we've got some handy kind of date fields that you can use to report on. For example, last review can be really important, especially if you review your procedures, annually. You want to make sure that they're still up to date, they're still relevant to what you do as a business. So you can actually use that date, report on those procedures, and just making sure that they are still relevant. And then the most important thing is the approval of that procedure. So I can tick that box, and by ticking that box, I'm telling the system that I am happy to now use that and link that to quality records. So in terms of procedures, that's pretty much it. There's not loads to fill out, and it's fairly straightforward to create a new one. You can choose when you create the prefix. You can create a new prefix, and you can choose the starting number within there. So you can say that certain procedures start at certain numbers. Sorry, I just saw a question in the chat there, so I thought I'd answer that. No worries. Now, the last thing to show you just before we move on is the statuses. You have active and inactive. So I do recommend, upon reviewing those procedures, just make those ones that aren't relevant anymore inactive. Now, the next tab is your audits. So again, I won't spend too much time on this this part of it, but again, just showing you sort of creating a new one. That could be your internal ISO audit, and it's going to create that audit. And then you have some information that you can fill out. You can link a procedure to that particular record. So again, when you perform that audit, you know what procedure you're going to be using. You can categorize your audits as well, again, for reporting purposes, and that's very much user defined. As you can see there, you can actually populate your own categories in there and then report on those however you like. Then we've got some frequencies, so you can say how often you're going to be performing the particular audit. And then the system will create a new audit activity, the first one in that list, where you can select your due date. And then when that's actually performed, you can start filling out the information about that particular audit instance. Now, there's handy paper clips, just like the previous record. Top of the screen could be the template that you use whenever you're going to be performing that audit. Could be a Word document, something that you fill out. That can be in there, so that can just be quickly printed off every time you need to perform it. And then that populated report can then be attached to that activity instance at the bottom. So you've got that for your records. And you can say the date it was performed and who performed it. And then you've got some notes there, so you can actually write up in detail how the that particular audit went. It could be you might have had some non-conformances that came out of that. Again, you could reference those in the notes, so you can fully understand how that particular activity went. And just like the procedures, you can make them active and inactive for those audits that are no longer relevant. Now, the dashboard is a really handy tool to use to track some of your quality statistics as well as records. So these kind of two intertwine to some degree. So I've just got a couple quality dashboard pages set up that I'll quickly show you. So obviously I created those audits, that audit earlier, and it's actually in my list now. So you've got a list there of all your open audits. And then when we get into sort of rejects and NCRs, you can see that the system will actually populate those in a list format as well. And those are all available in the Tricorn standard library. There is actually a quality category that you can select, and it will show you all of the standard quality reports we have available at the moment. So there's 24 in there, and they cover pretty much every aspect of the quality module. So I do have a second quality page there as well, which have got a few other handy reports on there, like my machine maintenance schedule, like my equipment calibration schedule. So again, you can see when these activities are going to be coming up, when they need to be performed, and just making sure you stay on top of those things. Now, the next part of the quality system, will it send you out a reminder notification to perform audits? So it won't send you out a reminder to perform audits, but it will obviously be displayed on your dashboard. We are working potentially on having maybe the task feature potentially being integrated into audits, potentially where we could have that notify you. But at the moment, there isn't anywhere that it will notify you. But like I say, if you can control it on your dashboard and just make sure you are checking that regularly, you shouldn't miss any sort of vital audits. And again, the task feature is something that I will be getting into throughout this sort of presentation. Now, the next section I want to look at is rejects and non-conformances, concessions and complaints. It's very similar how you raise those records. But I sort of recommend when raising these things to do them through the appropriate record you want to raise them on. It's very sort of common to use the plus at the top of the screen. Go into the reject tab, press the plus of the screen to create a new reject. But what you'll have to do is fill out a lot of the data manually. So if I was to go to my reject section and press that plus at the top, you can see I've got to select my customer, I've got to select my part. What I'd highly recommend doing is, like I say, going to the works order, for example, that you want to create the internal or customer reject non-conformance for, and selecting the relevant section of the works order to raise it from. So for example, if I want to raise an internal quality record on a works order, I can actually choose the operation on the route that I want to raise the quality issue from. And there's a handy QMS button that I can select, and it gives me various options. And as you can see, every option matches the options on the left-hand side. So if I choose to raise a internal non-conformance on this bending operation, you can clearly see it's populated all of that information for me automatically. It's linked to the op as well, so I don't have to do any of that, providing I obviously know that information beforehand. Now, the summary is going to be essentially the reason why there was a non-conformance. So it could be bad material, or maybe the machine wasn't set up correctly. And then I can choose the non-conformance quantity. And that is now going to go away, and it's going to create the internal non-conformance for me. And we can see it's linked the procedure automatically to that record. And it's given me the standard containment, corrective, root cause, and preventative action boxes. Now, I mentioned the task feature earlier. So there is a handy task tab on the quality records, and you can actually see it throughout the system now in Tricorn. And what you're able to do is create task subscribers. So when a particular record is raised, it can send a task to a particular person or a group of people. Now I have assigned the task feature to go to Joe in this instance. So what I can see in this task list at the bottom, as I'm logged in as Joe, I can see his task list here, and we can see that new NCR that I just created is now in his task list for him to action against. Now going back to that non-conformance record, you can see it's populated everything like the works order, the operation. I can choose the operator and the inspector that may have identified these problems and ran the particular machine. And then what I can do is I can decide how I want to handle these things by raising a rework works order. And what that does is it gives me the option to then select from the batches that I want to rework. So you can just tick or untick. And then I've got a couple options at the top. I can essentially raise a rework card. I can actually choose to rebuild the items completely, or I can replace with spares that I might have, as this might be a part that we have overruns for. If I choose to rework the items, that's going to go away and create a rework works order, which is basically a blank card, and then you can add the appropriate ops to the work center section, as well as the material, if there's any additional material that you need to purchase. And that is then going to build up rework costs in your cost summary. So if I, for example, throw a operation in there, with a cost per hour, so we've got a bit of cost in there. And if I go to the cost summary now, we can see we have some costs that will apply, and then what you'll see is reservations will be created within the delivery batches section that actually be linked to the original order, and you'll be able to see from the original order exactly how much you've spent on rework and rebuilding costs. So all of the quality costs will be captured from that main card. So if you were to make that part again, hopefully you can prevent those quality issues happening in the future. But when dealing with rework cards, it's just like a normal works order. You'll be able to print a root card that can go to the shop floor. That rework action can be completed. And then from the delivery batches tab, there is actually an option to complete the rework in the bottom left. And this is something that some users aren't aware of. So they end up trying to invoice and deliver from the rework card, and you can get yourself in a bit of a muddle. So it's good to understand that there is a complete rework button in the bottom left, which will actually send the rework parts back to the original card, so you can deliver and invoice them as normal. So if I go back to the original card, just to quickly show you what that looks like, in the parts tab, there is a rework requirement, and you'll be able to see the sourcing for that rework requirement has linked to our rework card, and you can see the 2 batches that are being currently reworked. And all of this information will then get fed back to the original card under the rework and rebuild costs, so you can clearly see how much additional you spent on rectifying those quality problems. And like I say, in the future, you should hopefully be able to prevent those so that the job is more profitable. And that's essentially what Tricorn is trying to indicate to you. Now, you may not always want to create a new card for these things, so you can actually insert a rework op instead into the routing, and again, the cost will still be captured into that category. The last thing to cover on that section is just from the purchasing side of things. Obviously, you may want to raise supplier rejects. You can do that through the system as well, and you can do that on the purchase order. It gives you the same options or similar options, but you can also do that upon returning material to stock as well. So when you remove a sourcing record within the material section, so if I was to source this card quickly and then return it to stock, it will actually give me the option to create a supplier reject note as well. So again, it's just understanding what parts of the section of the system will trigger those quality records to be raised. And upon raising a quality record from the batches, again, the system will recognize if a batch has been delivered, whether or not it's a customer reject or an internal rejection as well. So it tries to be helpful by understanding those things based on the status of the batches. Now there is a new feature in the system, a new tab, which is our ECRs, which is actually linked with the quality system as well. So you can actually see on the works order, there is an ECRs tab. And if I go into that tab, you can actually create a new ECR, and you can link a works order to it. And that's essentially an engineer change request. So for those jobs that you do regularly, you may want to log those ECRs so you can make amendments to the template if you use works order templates. Again, it's all about improving the way you'll be manufacturing these parts, and the ECR feature that comes with the quality system is one way you can do that and at least log those changes. The ECR feature will also allow you to raise those records through SFDC as well. So if that's a tool that you have, you'll be able to raise those records through data capture. As there's no questions in the chat, I'm going to move on to the last two tabs of the QMS system, and that is just the machines and equipment.
And I think there is a question, Paul. Is that correct for that section?
Yeah, there are some questions, Anne.
Okay.
I'll just put them through now so you can read them. I was just trying not to stop your flow the whole way through, but I'll send them over now.
Okay. Okay. Let's have a look. If that creates demand for more material in your purchasing assistant, the customer's happy to. Sure. How do you get around that? So you'd essentially you just wouldn't create the demand for the material. When you raise a rework works order, you have the option to copy the works order items or not. So it'd be a case of just not creating the demand by inputting the material requirements. That would be the only way you could keep it off the purchase order assistant. Otherwise, if you do add a material that hasn't been sourced to obviously a works order, it will create that demand. So there you'd have to just be careful with how you enter the rework card. Does that work the same on rebuilds? It's exactly the same. Yeah, rebuilds is the same. The only thing that's different to the reworks and rebuilds is you can deliver an invoice from rebuilds, as rebuilds are treated as a new card, but they'll be given an RB number at the end, so you can at least see what that rebuild card is essentially rebuilding. But yes, you can deliver an invoice from that. That's the difference to the rework. The rework you have to complete within the delivery batches tab, but rebuild you don't have to do that. Yes, you will get an ECR flag. So if you've got an ECR that hasn't been approved or hasn't been looked at yet, when you go to raise a new card, if I just quickly show you that. So that little green bar that you're seeing there, it says there's no open ECRs for this part and issue. If there was, it will show you how many are there, and you'll actually be able to click that section and move to that ECR as well. So you can go and deal with that ECR before you proceed and create a works order for it. You'll also be able to see the quality statistics as well. So you'll be able to see if it's a problem part, what the rejected NCR percentages are. So you know if you need to maybe build a bit more, or maybe it needs to be addressed first, and understand how you might be able to manufacture that better, so that you don't get a non-conformance or a reject next time you build it.
That's all the questions out. Thanks. So if you want to carry on.
That's all the questions, sir. Okay. Okay, so the last section. Oh, we use copy template to work with this flat, and so it won't, and that's why when you go to raise a new works order, instead of copying the template to a works order, I highly recommend raising the works order using the plus, because if you select a part that has a template attached, you can use the template from this screen. So there'll be a tick box that will come up to say to use the template, but you'll also be able to see the quality statistics and if there's any ECRs that are outstanding. So I highly recommend raising it through this section here, so using the plus at the top, because you will be able to do everything that you can do now, plus you'll get all the indicators. Okay, I'm going to move on to the machines now. I'll keep looking in the chat for questions, but I'll quickly just run through machines and equipment. So machines and equipment are very similar sort of screens, similar to the audit section as well. So again, you can use the plus at the top to add the machines, and then you'll be able to say what the frequency is. On the right hand side here, you can check the frequency, so you can see how often you have to do in-house or external maintenance, and then it's going to create the machine maintenance activities here, just like it does with the audits, and then you can set a due date, who performed it, certificate numbers, and you can actually attach anything relevant to that kind of service of the machine. And like I say, it's very similar with equipment. You can create the equipment and you can add the calibration activities along with the frequencies, creates your schedule, and again you can then say the date it was performed, who performed it, but then you have these two extra sliders now, which says, was the tool within tolerance? Did you have to adjust it, or did it have to be adjusted? So again, you can document all of that, and then that is going to feed your dashboard, like I showed you earlier, and show you all of the sort of relevant reports and lists with the next activity as well. So you'll be able to see when you next need to calibrate it. Now, the next section I'm going to look at is going to be the purchasing assistant. So we can have a look at that. I'll show you the RFQs and the purchasing assistant together, because it makes sense to sort of show them together. So if we go to RFQs, now the RFQ feature is going to allow you to essentially go and get a quote from multiple suppliers for the same material, or it could be a list of items that multiple suppliers are going to supply you, and then you can go and get the best price, and then you can choose to go ahead with one of those suppliers. And this works at quoting stage as well as works order stage. So I'm just going to quickly show you how you can raise an RFQ for those items. Now you can do it from the RFQ screen itself. So you can click on the RFQ tab, you can use the plus at the top, and then it's going to create a blank RFQ like you're seeing here. And you are able to add your suppliers to the top. And I think the limit is about 10. I think it's about 10 suppliers that you can have at the top of that screen. So you can have, you've got quite a few in there that you'll be sending an RFQ to. And then you want to add the items. Now you can use the plus at the bottom like you can on a purchase order. You can add materials, you can add parts, you can add subcon and other. So all four item types. And then I can add the material, and that will be for stock. But if you want to link a quote or a works order, you can actually go to that particular record in question. You can go to the material requirements, and there's actually an RFQ button in there that you can press. Now, if you have an RFQ open already, it will actually suggest, oh, do you want to add it to the RFQ that you have open? So I can actually press that, and it will go ahead and it will add that item to our RFQ, like you see in there. And it has actually added the preferred supplier of that material as well. So it will automatically start adding extra business cards to the top of the screen, so they are at least a supplier that you'll be sending the RFQ to. And I can do the same on the works order. You can go to your material section, and there's the same button there that you can press, and you can add that item to the RFQ. Now, the system has a print and email function, just like it does in the quote screen, the purchase order screen. So you can press that and it will send an email. It will generate a separate email for each supplier. So it keeps it nice and discreet. So you won't be like a group email that's sent. They all will be separate. And again, you can have an RFQ template that can be printed, just like current templates you use. And then when you get those responses back from those suppliers, they all have a column where you can fill out their information. So I can put a unit price in, I can put a total price in, the system will calculate the unit price, and I can put a lead time and a carriage as well, if they've quoted that separately. So we can go in here and we can fill that information out. And then you can clearly see a nice kind of overview of how much you've been quoted per unit and what the lead time is. And then when I want to go ahead, can this be changed? So at the moment, no. So obviously, when you accept an RFQ, like you said there, obviously if you've got it cheaper because the quantity's higher, it will still update the 200. It will still update the material record for the amount that you're getting the 200 off. But you can prevent it doing that. So when I go to accept my quotation, so I can right click and I can accept that particular quotation, you do have these options at the bottom. So if you don't want to change the cost, you can untick the first box you'll see in there. So set supplier and cost as default. If you don't want to change the unit cost, then you can say no to that. And if you're finding that the RFQ module is updating other quotes and works orders where the quantities are different, the second to last option, if you just untick that, it won't do that either. So it's only going to update that particular item. So you're going to update that particular item for that particular quote or works order that is for. So you don't need to worry. If you can untick those, it shouldn't do any overwriting for you. But one major setting that's useful to keep ticked is the save quoted part of material cost for other suppliers. So what it will do is it will start to build a supplier association to that material. So if you have to go to an alternative supplier for any reason, you'll be able to see what those alternative suppliers are, what their prices were. So it's going to help your procurement team a lot more in those instances. But it will also allow you to build that library of suppliers that can supply that material. So if you have to go with a supplier that's more expensive in the future because their average lead time is lower, you'll be able to clearly see that by just going to the material record. And then the last option on there, because this item's for stock, I can actually launch the purchase order assistant and go and purchase that particular material. So the two modules can be linked. And then it goes and it will open up the purchase order assistant just to purchase that one item. And you can put it over to the right hand side and you can buy it for your works order, for your for stock, whatever it is for. And if you use the source all item button at the bottom, we can then go and create our purchase order for tartar steel, and we can now go and buy that particular material we just got a quote for. And there's your purchase order that's been created. Does this list here now reflect any delivery charges into each price of use, which is calculated and displayed? So you can do total price per part inclusive, postage and packaging. So obviously the actual purchase order itself has a separate delivery charge there of £25. So you can see that there. The actual works order, if it's linked to a works order, does actually have a purchase order delivery section as well. So it should differentiate between the two. You should be able to see what the unit cost is, and then you should be able to see what you're paying for just carriage itself. That's how the system should be displaying that data for you. Will the subcon RFQs work the same way? I'd be able to apply the price rates per drawing number on subcon. Yeah, so again, obviously, if you untick those options, it won't do that. But obviously, if you do want to have different prices for different price breaks, I recommend having like 3 quotes. So for example, if you've got you're doing a quote for 10, 25 and 50 to your customer, and they all need to go to obviously go to subcon, I would create 3 separate quotes for those things, and then you can add those 3 items to an RFQ and get a price for each quantity, because there'll be 3 items on your RFQ, all for the same process and for the same part, but because there'll be different quantities, you'll be able to actually log that separately on the RFQ. But then you need to make sure those boxes are unticked so it doesn't overwrite any other outstanding quotes and works orders. Okay, the last couple bits then to show you, I will just hop into the purchasing assistant very quickly, just to show you some useful features of it that you may not be using if you don't know about it. So the purchasing assistant, if you don't know how to access it, it's on the purchasing tab, and it's the kind of board with bullet points and a tick. And what that essentially is going to do is now list you everything that needs to be sourced in the system. Now, if you actually scroll along, there is some useful date fields in here. So one of them is needed by, one of those is ordered by. So you can actually drag these along, so they're actually more to the front of the data that you're going to be viewing. And these date fields are going to be controlled by the lead time that you get quoted. So if you use the RFQ module correctly and you can log that lead time, what that's going to do is that will then tell you when you need to order it by. And if you do have a scheduling tool with us, the scheduling tool is going to tell you when the works order is going to start. So it will then calculate when you need it by as well. And then you're able to sort the data by the order by date, and you can start buying to your schedule rather than trying to work out when you need to buy items. And those are 2 fields that are kind of tucked away at the end that people aren't always aware of. and it's well worth putting them forward so you can utilize those data fields to help with your buying habits. And then for anyone who's not aware of how to use the purchasing assistant, it's just a case of putting the items over to the right hand side, and then you can choose your supplier if you haven't already got a supplier for these items. And then it's just a case of using the source all items button in the bottom right, and the purchase order assistant has a bit of intelligence where it can work out if you're trying to buy items from multiple suppliers, and it will suggest to raise multiple purchase orders, and I can say yes, and it will go and process those things. Now you can also have a stock check option on as well, which can allow you to, instead of buying the items, it can warn the procurement team that you actually have stock of this already, and you can allocate stock from this screen rather than that having to be done before it gets to the purchasing team. So again, these are settings you can switch on to allow you to do those things. And that's going to go away now, and it's going to create 2 purchase orders. You can see a progress bar there, and then you can see the number of purchase orders that have been created, and there's a green link that I can press that is going to take us straight to that purchase order, so you can start printing and emailing those documents out of your system. Were there any questions on that one, Paul, at all, or should I move on to the last?
No, there's no more questions on that topic. There's a couple of questions sitting, waiting to come over, but we'll go through them at the end because they were more relating to the quality module.
Okay, so the last 2 items I want to cover is the contract review, which some of you may already have. So on a works order now, we have a sort of a digital contract review form that can be created. So below where you would raise your order acknowledgements, there's actually a bar now that says contract review, and if you press it, you can create a contract review for that particular job, and it creates a digital form which is totally customizable, providing you have the rights, your user has the rights to edit this form. You will be able to come in here, add sections, delete sections, and you'll be able to build your own contract review form and fill it out digitally, so you don't have to have a paper one to go with all of your jobs. It can be done all within the system. Obviously, if you still like the paper format, or there's still requirements to keep it for sort of in the paper format for the time being, there is an option to print the contract review out, and it can print the whole form. You know, we can have signature bottom boxes at the bottom so people can sign it, and the different departments can fill out their relevant sections. But there is a digital contract review module that you can add on to your works orders. And like I say, it's fully customizable, so it can be filled out however you need. And you can also lock the system down. There's actually contract review setup options that can prevent you progressing a job until the contract review has been completed. It can actually block people from sourcing the material to the job, trying to print the route card. So we can put these stoppers in place to make sure that people are following the correct process before releasing a job to production.
No questions on that, so you can move on.
Okay. Okay, and the last thing I want to show you is just the import tool that Paul mentioned at the beginning. So in the file option now, there is an import option that can be switched on. So we do have the ability to import works orders, parts, materials, and also bombs as well. So this is a feature that will obviously be available at a price that you'll be able to add on to your solution, because it's going to save you a lot of time. You know, if you are building those sort of big complex bombs all the time, you'll be able to actually have an Excel template that we can provide you. You can populate that, and you can actually create, like I say, works orders and big assemblies, sort of with a few clicks of a button. So that's sort of an exciting feature that should be hopefully available very soon. Anything to add on that, Paul?
No, do you want to just show them roughly how it works? Maybe some of the templates from that screen.
Yeah, of course. So essentially what you're able to do is by pressing the import file option, I'll just go away and find so I can actually populate I can populate this data here, and then if I press the go option, it'll actually go away and it can go and create a load of works orders for us, which we can then use to import into the system. So it's just selecting the Excel icon and pressing go. It's going to go away and it's going to create those works orders for us. Just see if I've got a workable one to quickly show you, so you can sort of see how it works. Just bear with me. So if I just press go there, you can see now it's going to process that information. It says the works order import is complete. And then if I press OK, it will actually create those works orders for us. And in this instance, it has sort of suffixed the item order number in the top left, but it has actually created all of those items for us. So it can speed up the sort of whole process of inputting the data manually. You can fill out an Excel sheet and just push the data straight into the system.
Well, that's good. Thank you, Ant. So we're slightly ahead of schedule, I think. Ant, is that everything you wanted to run through with everyone, Ant?
Yep, that is everything on the agenda.
Okay, Scott's got a couple of questions, so I'll put them through. I think Laura's going to try and turn your microphone on for you, Scott, as well. So if you want to speak, you'll be able to speak, and hopefully that'll work, and Ant will be able to hear you. But I've just put them through for you now, Ant.
No, it's enabled, Paul, not on.
Okay.
I've enabled it, Scott, for you. You'll just need to turn it on still.
Well, Scott has put some questions in the chat there. When we calibrate veneers, we take readings over a size range.
Okay, so Scott's not able to be in a place that he can chat, so that's fine. So if you just want to answer his questions that he's typed through, that's great.
Yeah, of course. When we calibrate veneers, we take readings over a size range and record the data. What's the best method of doing this in the equipment screen? So if you're using like an Excel document to do that already, obviously the fields at the bottom here at the moment are the only ones available to fill out that information. If you've got to be a bit more detailed and you have a proper, like I say, Excel document that you fill out or a bit of paper that you print out to record all of those readings, I recommend still doing that method at the moment, but then using the paperclip icon to attach. It's paper T-cards at the moment. Okay, yeah. So what I do is I'd fill it out and I'd scan it in, and then I'd attach the copy to the equipment record. Probably the best thing to do at the moment until we customize this a bit more to allow you to have maybe a digital form that can be filled out instead. And then obviously the other one where you're scan and adding certificates and worksheets to the machine servicing page. Yes, you can. It's exactly the same as the equipment section. There's a paperclip icon. Yeah, the stock checkbox. So that actually comes from, it's a setup option that you'll need to switch on. So it's in the tools and setup screen of Tricorn. And in options and purchasing, under PO options, there's an enable stock check tick box that you can see there. So if I press the pencil, I'll just make it a bit more obvious. So I can untick and tick that there. If you tick that, that will actually switch on that function. So when the purchase order assistant sort of does its thing, it will do a stock check for you. So you don't, like I say, buy something that you actually have stock of. You can allocate directly from that screen. Can you show us how to schedule the POs from the PO assistant for staggered deliveries, and will the PO assistant make a requirement for minimum and maximum stock levels? So obviously for staggered deliveries, if you've got a requirement for, let's say, 1,000, and you need them to be delivered 100 every month, if the 1,000 is for the same works order, you aren't really going to be able to stagger the schedule because the entries have to be different. But if it's 1,000 for, let's say it's for several works orders, then it's a bit different. You'd be able to stagger them because they'd be separate entries. So there's no way to really kind of demonstrate that without, if I go to the PO assistant quickly and just see if I can find an item that's similar. So if we take the stainless tube here, so these items are exactly the same. These 3 material items are the same, but they're for 3 separate works orders, and they're all for a quantity of 150. I'm able to add these separately to the right-hand side, and I can untick bundle items, and that will keep them as separate line items on a purchase order. And then I can choose the different required dates for the different deliveries. So that could be the 30th, and then I could change that to the 30th of April, and that to the 30th of May, and that is how they'll be displayed on the purchase order. But like I say, if it's for the same works order, or if it's for stock, you'd have to create separate line items on the PO to do that. But that's how you'd achieve it. If they were for different works orders, you can stagger the deliveries like that. And the minimum maximum stock level, that is something that is visible within the purchase order screen. But what you can do is on a part or material record itself, there is a minimum stock level button in there. And if you have a value in there, when you go to raise a purchase order, if it doesn't meet the minimum values, it will actually round it up to the minimum value you have in there. So the system will automatically, if I try and order 1, it will automatically add 99 on, because it knows that the minimum sort of stock level and order value is 100. So you can use that, and the system will understand where to add the additional. And the machine screen can set tasks like the order screen. They actually can do, yes. So you can have a task subscriber set. So I've set Joe up in this example, and you can see there that when an activity was created, he actually has a routine maintenance activity now to carry out that task. So you can do that. You can set task subscribers so those things are assigned to the correct users. Going back to it, if you raise NCR during an audit, can you create it from the audit screen so it links? You can't do that, but what you can do is you can create an internal NCR that is not linked to a job. So we can create an NCR, and this could be an audit NCR. Make it internal. And then the internal reference could be the audit number that you're using. And what that does is it then creates an internal NCR that's not works order related. And then it just gives you a reason, and then you can populate the audit number in there. What we plan to do in the future is give you the ability to raise a non-conformance from the audit screen, but at the moment it's not possible. But this is very much still a workable solution for you, so you can record that. Well, can I scroll up to see the questions? I don't know if, oh yeah, I can. Okay, try and do that. So the price break system, price break system works in a couple ways. So you can actually have standard price breaks set on parts. So you can then just choose the range, or the system will work out the range for you automatically. Or you've got the multiple quotes option that you can use directly from the quote screen, where you can add multiple line items for the same parts, and then you can just adjust the quantities. So that can be 25, and that could be 50. And then what the system will do, as you can sort of see there, it kind of lowers the quoted unit price as your quantities get higher, and then you're able to display those price breaks on the quote. So it depends, obviously, if you make your own parts or if you have standard products, you can set standard price breaks. But for Tricorn with the multiple quotes option, that's more for your bespoke stuff. And the system will try to suggest a better quoted unit price as you save money over set time, if it's possible. So those are like the two ways you can do it, depending on what you're manufacturing. I'd like to know more about Dashboard 2 customer portal push booked by customer. Let's know more about the customer portal push. Okay, so the customer portal push, that's my fault. My system's got a lot of settings switched on. So customer portal push isn't something that we have available, and it's not something that I'll be able to demonstrate to you right now. Order book by customer, can you use the company reference from the customer info? Yeah, you could definitely do that. Obviously, it depends on if that's a paper report that you're using. We can group the data by the company reference. That's not a problem, and that's something that our support desk could help you with if that's a report that you're using at the moment. Lastly, when I'm invoicing, some of the items say the status is issued, even with a delivery note rather than delivered. So if the works order is still issued, but you believe it's delivered, the reason for that would be either you haven't got automatic status change. Again, it's a setting that you can switch on. So it's an automatic status movement. So when all the batches have been delivered, the works order will automatically be changed to delivered. Or if you do have that setting switched on, you probably have another batch on the works order, and because that's not been delivered yet, the system is not saying that particular works order is delivered. So that's why it'd be staying at issued rather than delivered. So again, obviously something to double check. Can you set minimum order quantities for customers? You can't set them for customers, I'm afraid. It's just for obviously the part of material that you're purchasing yourself. What you could potentially do though, and it's not something that is going to stop you quoting or creating a works order lower than the minimum order quantity, but Tricorn has user-defined fields that you can create. So you could create a user-defined field on the customer record called minimum order quantity. So this could be minimum order quantity. And then you could just set that to 20, 30, whatever it is. And then you could have a process in place that you check the minimum order quantity on the customer record before sending a quote, just to make sure they're hitting the minimum order quantity that you've set for them. So again, this is another section of the system that people might not be aware of, is you can create your own fields on the screen. And again, you just need to have the rights to do that. And that is just a user account right that you can turn on. So you can set up your own fields to store that information. What's the stores tab? So the stores tab is for your standard locations. So instead of having to type out the location when you book something in on a purchase order, beforehand you used to have to type into that box, but now you can predefine them in the stores tab, and then you can set those locations as the default for items. So on your materials, on your parts, you've got a drop down now where you can set a stock location, and then when you book the items in, it can actually populate that location box automatically with the default location, or you can use the drop down to select from the list. It just saves people actually typing in the wrong location or misspelling a location so it doesn't show correctly on reports, things like that. Going back to price breaks, I'd like Tricorn to automatically choose the pricing based on the quantity it's ordered and entered. I use the multiple quotes already, but this doesn't set this up. So obviously the multiple quotes function is intended to kind of do that. Like, it's not to create the pricing for you. That's something that you'll have to determine yourself to begin with. But you create the benchmark, and then when you use the multiple quote function, the system should then work off of, as the quantity increases, how it should kind of intelligently decrease the quoted price as you save money over set time. But yeah, obviously, if that's something you don't believe it's doing or it's not working correctly, obviously just let us know and we can obviously look into that one for you.
Okay, I think that's all the questions, and we've also just gone over time ever so slightly there. So thank you very much, Ant, for running that through. We will send out a survey, as mentioned earlier, after the webinar's complete, and there is the option there to voice any further questions that you've got that you want to ask. The survey will also give you the ability to suggest how often we should be doing these webinars, what other topics you'd like to see in the webinars as well, and any feedback, obviously, from today's webinar, which we'd really appreciate. So, yeah, I can see, Gwyneth, you've just asked, will there be more of these soon? Yes, the answer is yes. We're obviously hoping to do these more frequently for our customers. So obviously, we'll be sending out more details of when the next webinar will be. One other thing I just want to mention while we've got some of you left on the call is that we send out surveys regularly. We really appreciate you all taking the time to join this webinar, but we'd also really appreciate you taking the time to respond to any other surveys we've got around our support, our development projects and plans and things like that. So really appreciate everyone taking their time out today to join this webinar, and look forward to getting your feedback from the surveys. So thank you, everyone, for joining. Unless anyone's got anyone to add, I look forward to hearing from you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, bye.
Cheers.